this guy that looks exactly like the T-1000 Terminator from Terminator 2 and acts exactly like the T-1000 from Terminator 2.
He plays poker like the T-1000
Just
from Terminator
3-bet the
2.
river as a bluff.
I mean,
Terminator
wow.
style.
Yeah, you got to have no feelings at all to do that, man.
Let's get into it. Starting back with the flop where the weirdness starts a little bit, where Yushan, who had 3-bet pre-flop with 2 jacks, makes lots of sense, bets very small on this wet flop. 3-4-8 with 2 clubs, pretty wet, but 600 and 22.50. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on that?
Do not like. I would like to send it back for a refund. I think this sets up a bunch of problems. One thing is we bet so little as Yushan here, 600, like you're saying. It's encouraging such a wide range of hands to call. And having jacks, that means any ace, king, or queen that comes on the turn is still available and in T1000's range. T1000, I think, is calling hands like king, queen off here when it's only 600. Ace, jack, suited, that even if it doesn't have a backdoor or anything, for 600. It's just so cheap. It's so easy to continue. I think it's too easy to continue. I think this is a mistake.
Yeah, I think this is a flop that Yushan has a lot more pretty strong value than T1000 as far as overpairs are concerned.
For sure.
T1000 has more sets, but Yushan has more good hands in general as a percentage of his range than T1000 does. And
Absolutely.
I think he should charge all of T1000's equity a little bit more on this wet flop.
Yep.
So we think it's a bit of a mistake.
And you're going to see this small bet here does sort of open up a Pandora's box of problems as we continue in this hand.
So we get to the turn, which is the just nightmare shut it down for everybody card, the deuce of clubs. And the check upon first inspection makes lots of sense. And I think that's what I would usually do in Yushan's seat. Of course, it's what I would do in T1000's seat.
Of course.
There's nothing else to do. But due to the small bet on the flop, there is an argument to be made that you could bet this with the jack of clubs in your hand as Yushan.
I think it's a very reasonable thing to do. I'm not saying you should do it or you have to do it, but because hands like king, queen off are still around now and ace, jack suited without backdoors remain, we can fold some of those things out without even making a huge bet here. We can bet a third of the pot. They're not going to fold if they don't have a club in their hand. That's good.
Yeah, and what we give up here as Yushan by not betting along with removing some equity from the hand is that we're no longer Sean Wintering it, which is an old poker guy's term, which means essentially continuing to be aggressive even in a small way to keep your options open and your range uncapped. And Yushan is not capping his range entirely. I mean, he's going to check back the nut flush sometimes, I guess, but you'd really expect that most of his flushes are going to bet. And even if he had aces with the ace of clubs, he would probably bet. And if he has the ace of clubs in his hand at all, he's probably going to bet. So if another club comes, it's going to be really hard to rep it.
I mean, the one thing that Yushan can have that's very strong here is potentially pocket eights if he 3-bets that pre-flop, which I don't know that he does.
It's +1. He's probably not.
It's at least possible, right? And then he would check that back, I think, a bunch on this card, right?
Yeah, this is the death card
for that.
The death card for that hand. So, yeah, I think it's fine to check back, but there's a lot of arguments to be made for betting, and he just doesn't, which is, it's kind of the rote response to this card, which I think makes sense.
I mean, if we had bet more on the flop, a check back makes more sense because now the weakest parts of those overcards in the range are just not there as much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's more to deny now because we bet so small.
Exactly.
Well, we get the river, which is the 3 of hearts.
Get ready for some action.
Oh, okay. I'm excited. What do you think about T1000's 1/3 pot size bet here? It seems like he's trying to get called by ace high.
I mean, I don't know how often he's really going to get called by ace high. What was he check calling the flop with that ace high is beating now? Not very much, but maybe because it was only $600, there actually are king queens in there and things like that maybe can sometimes fold out ace high in theory.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So that's good. We can have some bluffs here. I think the other thing that is happening immediately anyway for T1000 is he's pretty clear that he's going to check call mostly here.
Yeah.
He's got top pair. It went check on the turn. It was a $600 bet on the flop. The pot isn't humongous. He's going to call any reasonable size bet on the river anyway. Now he gets to bet smaller, so he doesn't have to put in a lot of money when he's beat, right? It's only going to cost him, what did he bet, $1,200?
Yeah.
So it only costs him $1,200 if he's up against a hand like jacks, rather than if he checks, jacks are probably going to bet $2,000 or $2,500 a lot more of the time. And maybe he can get called a little bit by ace high two or worse hands once in a while.
Well, it looks like Yushan might have correctly read into the sizing and the intent, if that was indeed the intent of T1000's bet, because he raises his jacks. He's like, you know what? please give me some more value with your medium strength hand, which is very clearly what you have, T1000. How dare you try to get off for 1200? I have jacks. I'm a royal man with jacks, because it's one of the royal people is a jack.
Yeah,
I guess.
a jester.
Yeah.
In a court.
Yeah.
Royal court. Sure.
Yeah. So Yushan feels like obligated to get his nobility,
He's
nobility
really,
equity.
Really talk that up.
Yeah. Do you think this is too ambitious? I understand where Yushan's coming from, and it appears that he has kind of nailed the situation correctly. But is it too ambitious? Can he even get called by a hand like 10-8?
I mean, that's the real question. This is a real know your customer moment, I think. There's some guys you can raise and absolutely get called by worse hands, right? You're pretty sure you're ahead most of the time here.
Yeah.
But if you can't get called by worse, a raise has no value. A raise does nothing for you and may have negative value, as we're going to see. This one really might.
Yeah.
But so if you know you can get called by 2 9s here, or 2 10s here, or an 8 here.
And there's a lot of poker players in the world who just can't let go of those hands in this spot. Yeah.
Right. Especially when they bet tiny on the river and they may think like, yeah, you're just trying to make a play at me. Right. So then that's going to work, right? But if you have a guy who's going to fold here anyway, isn't going to continue with worse hands, except to shove it in your face, which is what T1000 is about to do. Like it's a big pie in the face, and I'm expecting a really good GIF for that. As I'm saying that, then that's just a problem. And so I'm concerned about getting called by worse here. And we really have to know that our opponent can do this and call with a worse hand.
Yeah, and as the poker guys, we haven't seen that much T1000, so we don't really know if he's going to call with his hand with some frequency or not. What we do know is this time he shoves it down his throat.
Yes.
He goes all in for 17,100, which, good or bad, is just an incredibly badass play.
Oh.
It's just so cool. It is worthy of the Terminator.
Your clothes, give them to me. It's like that.
Except it's the other one.
I'll
the
be
other
back.
one.
It's like that.
It's the one that's all liquidy and stuff.
He doesn't really ever talk. Oh no, he's like, hey, I like your motorcycle. He's that guy.
Yeah.
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 That's cool.
And then he turns into liquid.
Oh,
and then he
so incredible.
3-bets all in with the 8's full blocker, which is important. So let's talk about the factors that lead T1000 to do this and if it is good. Okay.
Great.
So I think the first thing that leads him to do this is that although Yushan sniffed out what was going on with T1000, I think T1000 re-sniffed out what was going on with Yushan and realized that, the sizing's been small throughout the hand. He might be trying to eke out more value with a medium strength, pretty good hand. He doesn't have very many flushes in his range because he checked back the turn. 8's full, which is his only potential full house,
if it can even be there,
is blocked by me.
Yeah.
So what the hell can this guy have? He can have a lot of hands that beat me, but they can't call a shove, can they?
Yeah. I mean, are flushes going to love their spot? Forget about overpairs. How are flushes going to feel about getting shoved on? They may call, but they sure ain't going to love it. Right?
Yeah. I mean, even if flushes are all going to call, I think it's still probably fine because Yushan very rarely has a flush after playing the turn that way.
I agree. And it would be cool to have a club in our hand if we could, but we can't because we're suited here. So that was just never going to happen. We can't really have an 8 in our hand unless it's pocket 8s, and it's too strong anyway to have a club in our hand too. This just feels like Yushan betting 600 on the flop, checking the turn. If he had a flush, wouldn't he have found a way to build this pot more?
Yeah,
I just feel like he would have probably bet more on the flop and certainly bet the turn almost always.
Right. And that plus not being able to have any full houses at all.
Except maybe one combo of 8s, maybe.
Just maybe. On top of that, T1000 does have full houses in his range.
Yes, he does.
I could see him playing them all this way, including deuces full, by the way, because of the 600 on the flop. Now, the 3s, 4s, and 8s are a little bit more questionable because he didn't check raise the wet flop in the 3-bet pot. But he's sometimes at least going to show up with sets still. It's just a little bit less likely. That's the one wrinkle in his plan that's not quite perfect.
The story is not this is a little bit like at the very end with the thumbs up thing, and it's like that's an unfeeling machine, right? Why is it giving the thumbs up as it goes into the lava? The story's not perfect. I don't know that it really matters because it's $13,100 more to call, and the guy's range is pretty freaking weak, and I just don't know that he can call.
I think it's ultimately just a profitable winning play. Even if there's one tiny piece of the story that's not great, the rest of it is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.